So, revolutionary greetings to you all, comrades. Thank you very much for joining us today for this great conversation that's very pertinent towards the unification of Africa. Myself and my name is Brother Pigbin. I am one of the coordinators for Conscious Empathetic Group, alongside our chair, Brother Kwame, who is not with us today. And we also have other coordinators, including Sister Ida and Sister Myra. So Conscious Empathetic Group is actually a philosophical and ideological study grouping that studied the book of Kwame Kuma called Consciousness. It's not only the book. Kuma wrote this as a philosophy and ideology for decolonization of Africa. We have been meeting every Thursday for the last almost 3 years to read and discuss the book written by Kwame Kuma, Consciousness. And all our previous recordings have been uploaded on our YouTube channel without a fail. So at this particular moment, permit me to recognize your presence, comrades, all comrades present with us, starting from, of course, we have Sister Georgina who is joining us today. We have Sister Amav, Ghana, of course, Sister Brother Benny, also Ghana, South Africa, Sister Chisomo, Malawi, South Africa, Scotland. We have Brother The King from Ghana as well. There are Anunnaki joining us from South Africa. Green Arc Work, I'm not sure where you're joining us from. We have Comrade Raquel Makona, I believe from South Africa, Elder Sam from South Africa, Dr. Stephen also joining us from the other side of the Southern Africa. And other comrades will be joining us as we move along. Thank you very much for joining us, for finding time to be with us, and for this great conversation. Before we start this conversation, permit me to share the song by Bob Marley, Africa Unite. Then from there, we'll go to presentation straight. I will start by Brother Benny, and all other members who are interested to discuss or present, please raise your hand so that I can come to you. We'll have at least 5 to 10 minutes to say what you want, then you can have an open conversation to this. So thank you very much, and let me start the recording of that song by playing the song first.
Brother Pigbin. Africa, unite! Africa, unite! Unite, Africa, unite! Africa, unite! Africa, unite!
The message is very clear, comrades, that Africa must unite, and that we Africans, it's high time that we unite. And we are here for this conversation today because the unification of Africa is very important. As Kwame Kuma says, that the liberation or the independence of Ghana was meaningless unless it's tied with the total liberation of Africa. In this context, the unification of Africa is necessary. And irrespective of where we are coming from, we advocate for a united Africa, because that then can help us and save us from all this struggle we are having. So once again, feel most welcome, and we will be going straight to the session of where members who are interested to speak can come in and start sharing their thoughts to that. On the subject we're discussing today is xenophobic attack. And just probably to educate ourselves is to understand what is the word xenophobia. And in my previous research a bit, of course, I used a bit of the Google search on this, and it came out to understand the word xenophobia is coming from the Greek word xenos and phobia. And where xeno is actually somebody referred as a stranger, a xenon, and phobia is the fear. And then you come with the word xenophobia. which is the fear of a stranger or perceived fear of somebody you don't know. In this particular moment, we that, and permit me to share that as well, so that you can know where I'm reading this from. The word xenophobia, and it's what reading from actually the Wikipedia, and the reading, if I can share with you on the screen.
Don't count yourself out. You never know what story is going to resonate.
Is actually as it is, if you can see my screen. Xenophobia is from ancient Greek, which is xenos, which is strange, foreign, or alien, and phobos, which is fear. Is the fear or the dislike of anything that is perceived as being foreign or strange. It is an expression that is based on perception that a conflict exists between a group, in-group, or out-group. So that is basically a clear or a short explanation of what is xenophobia. And therefore today, we are open enough to have this conversation. So permit me to know if the first speaker will be ready to share with us his thought. Brother Benny also, and any member want to speak, please let me have your hand up. I'll give you the priority first to speak. Then we'll open up the conversation later for now, close discussion and open for this. Brother Benny also.
Yeah, please upload the paper. I send it to your WhatsApp if you can upload. I can upload from here. Yeah, but as he is, our brother is uploading for me. We have to understand that I presented a bit of history, but it doesn't get into the very past histories. But I just look at the history at the point where I was here when this xenophobia violence started in 2008, which it was so much unexpected in a way, but not that a surprise because of the influx of Zimbabweans that time in such a huge number that it was actually frightening. And it also happened because of what was happening in Zimbabwe over Operation, is it Morumbati or something like that? And people were displaced, their kiosks and places of marketing were destroyed in order to clean Harare. So the stampede that made people to come here, and then later on, the issue of criminality. But we are going to get into that. But just to give you a little bit of the background before. So please, would somebody read for me? It's about 5 pages, so that will be long, fast.
Anybody who is willing to read for Brother Benny also, if you can see the screen, please, anybody who is willing, please go ahead.
I can read that. It's me, Rachel.
Okay,
Hello,
carry
can
on.
you hear me?
Yes, carry on, Rachel.
Okay. I hope I'll be audible enough. The rise of vigilantism and xenophobia in South Africa. Root causes, political catalysts, regional responses, and containment strategies. Compiled by Bernard Owusu Sekwere, whatever. Sorry for the surname. Anyway, introduction. Defining violence and xenophobia. Violence, in its socio-political form, refers to the intentional use of physical force or power, threatened or actual, against individuals or communities, resulting in harm, psychological trauma, or deprivation according to World Health Organization 2002 in South Africa, xenophobia, violence, targeted aggression against foreign nationals, particularly African migrants, has become a recurring phenomenon since the watershed attacks of, I can't see it. Can you mind just to, I won't be able, I'm not able to scroll here. Thank you for that. Becoming a recurring phenomenon since the watershed attacks of May 2008, which left over 60 dead and displaced more than 100,000 people, according to Hema Chema, Mawere, and Mutapuri et al. Becker et al.
Don't mention the references. You may read the references.
All right, no problem. Xenophobia in South Africa is often framed as Afrophobia, hostility not toward all of our foreigners, but specifically toward African migrants from countries such as Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, and Nigeria. These attacks are frequently carried out under the guise of community justice or vigilantism, where groups claim to be protecting local interests from perceived threats posed by migrants. And then historical trends from 2008 to Operation Dudula. The 2008 xenophobic attacks in South Africa marked a turning point in the nation's post-apartheid history, as they were the first instance of large-scale systemic violence targeting foreign nationals, particularly those from other African countries. The events unfolded primarily in township communities where deep-seated frustrations over unemployment, poverty, and perceived competition for resources reached a boiling point. Mobs attacked homes, businesses, and places of worship owned or frequented by migrants, resulting in more than 60 deaths and the displacement of over 10,000 people. The scale, 100,000, sorry. Thanks for the correction. The scale and coordination of these attacks shocked both the local and international community, prompting widespread condemnation and urgent calls of government intervention. Can you beat up? Yes. You went up a little bit down. Oh, doesn't show a bit. After the calling for government intervention, yeah. In the years following 2008, xenophobic violence did not disappear, but instead resurfaced in new waves, notably in 2015, 2019, and again in the period from 2022 to 2025. Each resurgence often, can you scroll a bit up? Thank you. Please say, can you scroll it about a bit up where there's a resurgence? Resurgence often coincided with economic downturns, such as rising unemployment rates and inflation, which intensified competition for jobs and basic services. Can you scroll a bit up, Mr. Sir? I can't read the letters or underneath. That's better. Thank you. After the resurgence which intensified competition for jobs and basic services, political rhetoric during election cycles also played a significant role, with some leaders and parties blaming foreign nationals for social problems and using anti-migrant sentiments to mobilize support. In several instances, high-profile crimes allegedly involving foreign nationals acted as flashpoints, further inflaming public anger and leading to spontaneous or orchestrated attacks in urban and peri-urban areas. August and whatever, up to October 2024. A notable development in this ongoing crisis has been the emergence and rapid expansion of Operation Dudula, which began in 2021. Unlike earlier, more sporadic incidents, Operation Dudula is characterized by organized, sustained actions targeting clinics, schools, and businesses operated by foreign nationals, presenting itself as a grassroots movement. Dudula mobilizes local residents under the banner of protecting community interests. Members of the group conduct raids, demand the closure of establishments owned by migrants, and demand to scroll up a bit, and preoccupied enforces strictly immigration controls. Okay, thank you. Where was I? Dudula mobilizes local residents under the banner of protecting community interest. And then members of group conduct raids, demanding the closure of establishments owned by migrants, and pressure authorities to enforce stricter immigration controls. These activities have frequently gained tacit support from political actors, most prominently the Patriotic Alliance, who use the government's visibility to advance for their own agendas. Despite Dudula's claims of representing legitimate community concerns, its actions have been widely condemned by human rights organizations, legal experts, and civil society groups. Critics argue that Operation Dudula's raids and intimidation tactics violate constitutional principles of equality, non-discrimination, and due. Scroll a bit up, sir. Due process. The movement's targeting of essential services, such as healthcare facilities and schools, has raised serious ethical and legal questions, especially given South Africa's commitments to regional integration and migrant rights as part of the South African Development Community, SADC. The persistence and escalation of such vigilantism underscores the urgent need for comprehensive containment strategies that address not only immediate security concerns, but also the underlying socio-economic and political drivers of xenophobia. Root cause of vigilantism and xenophobia. Okay. Root cause, socio-economic inequality. The interplay of high unemployment rates and widespread poverty creates an environment ripe for scapegoating, particularly targeting migrant populations. Many individuals from local communities often express the belief that migrants are responsible for stealing jobs or placing an excessive burden on public services, such as healthcare and education. This narrative is rooted in a struggle for limited resources, leading to rising tensions between migrants and native residents. Perceived criminality. Foreign nationals are often unjustly portrayed as being significant contributors to criminal activity, a claim that persists despite the lack of robust evidence supporting such assertions. This widely shared belief stirs fear and distrust within communities, resulting in increased instances of vigilante actions against suspected migrants. For instance, the observation that Zimbabweans and Malawians are generally not involved in criminal activity in their home countries, but may engage in such behavior when in South Africa as a subject that warrants further investigation. In August 2025, a Zimbabwean suspect fatally shot a police officer during an escort onto that. Reports also link Zimbabwean ex-servicemen to heists and ATM bombings in South Africa. Additionally, Mozambican nationals have been implicated in various crimes, including murder and car hijackings. A Club of Mozambique, February 2017. Hold on a bit. A Club of Mozambique 2017, February 17. This to 20 February 16. These incidents highlight prevalent concerns about safety in South Africa that are sometimes unfairly associated with vulnerable groups. State failure. The deterioration of effective law enforcement and the sluggish pace of judicial processes significantly undermine public confidence in the state's ability to maintain order. As a result, committee members may turn to self-policing methods or mob justice, believing that they can achieve better outcomes than relying on an overwhelmed and inefficient legal system. From the author's observation in Pietermaritzburg City and enclaves, some residents of townships and locations turn to a sangoma instead of the police after robberies, highlighting distrust in the law enforcement and reflecting liberal capitalism in South Africa. The rich and higher middle class suburbs get regular and consistent policing, but not their townships and locations. Political opportunism. Certain political factions, including the Patriotic Alliance and various local leaders, have strategically leveraged anti-migrant rhetoric to bolster their support bases, particularly during election seasons. This approach often simplifies complex socio-economic issues and capitalizes on public fears surrounding migration, using scapegoating as a tactic to rally voters. Despite the whites who mostly employ the legal and illegal immigrants, there are cases which leave us to say they partly instigate the xenophobic sentiments. In 2015, DA Mr. Cola Barnard was involved in controversy related to comments referencing apartheid-era health and policing, as well as remarks concerning African immigrants. These actions led to her demotion by the DA party. Historical legacies. The enduring effects of apartheid-era policies have fostered deep-seated exclusions and spatial inequalities that continue to influence the social dynamics. With townships, according to Green Left, given the picture at an, I don't know, can you please scroll a bit up, sir? Townships, according to Green Left, have given the picture and nature of townships during the apartheid period as townships are dormitory towns, reservoirs of cheap labor, dumping grounds for dispossessed and displaced blacks. They are divorced from natural beauty and the green heritage. They are plagued by criminal violence and gangsterism, by disease and vandalism. They lack basic amenities. They are occupied by poverty-stricken people in a bleak and unhealthy environment. They must be destroyed. The research conducted by Munama, Mukwile, and Mukhutu highlights that many aspects of the city's spatial configuration established during the colonial and apartheid periods are both rigid and challenging to modify. Despite some limited progress, the influx of new residents into urban areas continues to lead to the emergence of informal settlements, often referred as squatter camps. For example, do you mind to scroll up a bit, sir? Okay, thank you. For example, in Johannesburg areas such as Diepsloot and Alexander have expanded rapidly as migrants and economically disadvantaged locals seek affordable housing, resulting in dense populated neighborhoods with limited access to basic services. Similarly, Cape Town's Khayelitsha and Philippi East have seen significant growth in informal dwellings where residents face challenges related to sanitation, electricity and security. These settlements frequently arise on the peripheries of established cities, reflecting both the persistent demand for shelter and the government's struggle to provide adequate housing solutions for an ever-growing urban population. Townships in South Africa, particularly those shaped by the planning practices of apartheid, do you want to scroll a bit up? Were predominantly situated in marginal areas characterized by an inadequate infrastructure, limited access to essential services, and heightened vulnerability to environmental risks such as flooding and landslides. The legacy of apartheid-era spatial planning, which relegated Black communities to environmentally vulnerable and marginalized areas, continues to have profound economic repercussions. Properties in these locations often lack collateral value, making it difficult for residents to access financial services or secure mortgages, thereby perpetuating cycles of poverty and limiting opportunities for economic advancement. The legacy contributes to contemporary attitudes among residents, which can manifest as a sense of entitlement and sometimes hostility towards migrant communities. Do you want to scroll up a little bit? Thank you. Hostility towards migrant communities. Such tensions are further exacerbated by perceptions that these migrants are competing for scarce resources and opportunities, adding complexity to the already strained relationships among various community groups. Regional responses, SADC and neighboring states. The South African Development Community, which is SADC, has issued multiple condemnations of xenophobic violence in South Africa, emphasizing regional integration and the protection of migrant rights. In 2022, SADC Executive Secretary Elias Magosi called the attacks anathema to the founding values of the regional bloc and urged bilateral engagement to protect citizens across borders. Zimbabwe. Following the murder of Elvis Nyati in Diepsloot, Zimbabwean officials demanded justice and called for regional solidarity. Civil society groups in Zimbabwe have also mobilized to support repatriated citizens. Mozambique and Malawi. Both countries have expressed concern over the safety of their nationals and called for diplomatic engagement. Mozambique, in particular, has emphasized the need for regional protocols on migrant protection. Scroll a bit up. Lesotho, Eswatini, Zambia, these nationals have largely responded through diplomatic channels, urging South Africa to uphold its constitutional and regional obligations. Some have offered temporary shelter to returning migrants. Civil society organizations such as the South African Litigation Center, SALC, have urged SADC to go beyond condemnation and implement concrete measures, including special courts for xenophobic crimes and humanitarian aid for displaced migrants. Containment and transformation strategies, legal enforcement, upholding sections 27 and 29 of South African Constitution, which guarantee health care and education to all, is critical. The Phakamisa judgment reaffirmed this rights for undocumented children. Pan-African education. Campaigns led by EFF and civil society emphasizes continental unity and challenge the notion of foreignness among Africans. Community dialogue. Initiatives like Kopanang Africa Against Xenophobia and Abahlali Basemjondolo promote grassroots healing and intergroup understanding. Economic inclusion. Job creation and township development programs must address the root cause of resentment and reduce the appeal of vigilante activism. Conclusion. A crossroads of justice and identity. South Africa's struggle with xenophobic vigilantism transcends national boundaries, representing a profound regional and continental challenge. The ongoing conflict between exclusionary nationalism and Pan-African solidarity surface deeper, unresolved questions about identity, justice, and the legacy of post-colonial societies. While vigilantism often presents itself as a means to restore order, it fundamentally erodes the constitutional principles and communal values essential to inclusive societies. Addressing this crisis requires coordinated action from governments, civil society, and regional bodies to champion human rights, uphold constitutional protections, and foster genuine unity across Southern Africa. Ultimately, the path forward demands a commitment to justice and collective healing that recognizes the interconnected destinies of all African nations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Kake. Please have an opportunity to introduce yourself and where you're joining us from. Thank you for the reading, Sister. Please go ahead.
Okay, my name is Rachel Makwana. Born and brought up in South Africa, in Soweto, Meadowlands. I schooled in Meadowlands, and then when I was doing matric 1976, I went to Moroka's high school in Tabanchu. But because of the 1976 uprisings, we had to come back home June 76, and being in the location, Meadowlands, Soweto, children, we were all protesting against what was happening to the students. So what I am saying is that because of, I remember when I was doing, can I continue? Okay. When I was doing, pardon?
Please continue to bring Brother Osu in.
All right. Yeah, when I was doing, I was part of the students in 1970. Let me start this. When we were going into high school from then, what we call Form 1 or standard grade 8, we started to be shocked because we were doing all the subjects. English was English, history was in English, Africans was Africans, history, physical science, whatever. Geography, but geography by then it was called social studies. We did everything, even the domestic science, then it was called domestic science. We were doing that in English in our school. But when we reached Form 2, which was grade 8 then, and it was unfortunate because of, by then we were buying books, for reading. Our parents were buying books for us. By the second term, which is by April, the parents had already bought history books, whatever, in English. Our parents were now forced, or we were forced to tell our parents to change the books that they were already bought to be the subject to be changed into Afrikaans. Even mathematics, we were doing it in Afrikaans. The students were not happy. And then during that year, we had our senior students, which were doing Form 3, and history students then were labeled as political or not political. They were stubborn, they were rebellious, because they were sort of initiating other classes not to use those books. We started by protesting that in 1975, before it went into 1976. But fortunately or unfortunately, our principal then, the late Mr. Lehwadi, had to go all the way to Pretoria to Department of Education, then Bantu Education, went to search what our school was registered for. Fortunately, our school then was registered that those subjects were taught in English. Then we had to go back to our books, English books. But in 1976, when this happened, our school had already started protesting, but because maybe it was a little school, because it was a secondary in somewhere in a corner in Midlands, maybe it didn't reach the whole world or whatever we're supposed to. But when it happened in 1976, we were part of that. And then it started with students arising from Morris Isaacson in Naledi or in Moletsane. So when the things started to blow out. So that's where the problem is. We were fighting against, it was not a violent action. We were protesting because our parents had bought books, and other schools, they were forced to do such subject, all the subject, English, maths, science, everything in Afrikaans because of the apartheid regime. So that was a peaceful protest against that, because most schools were registered in English, but suddenly whoever was the Minister of Education then during apartheid, Mr. whoever, changed that to suit them. As I was one of the students, I can just attest with it. When I was doing my standard 6, because we were to, I would say, grade 7, I was told by my principal, then the very same Mr. Lopal, I was the student I topped the whole of Transvaal then, because it was regions, Transvaal, Free State. I topped the whole of Transvaal in mathematics. But unfortunately, because of the jealousy of apartheid, my results were given to a Boer child somewhere, and I was never recognized. He told me he came to send me, called for me in a class when I was in high school, that do you know that you topped the whole of Transvaal in mathematics? That we even went to in Pretoria, we saw your name, but it was not recognized. The very same Boer, whatever boy, he was the one who was recognized. And were you not going to feel bitter? So I was the one who I really went for that, because I was really, really bitter. I told my dad, but unfortunately by then I was already in high school. Then I was just like, okay, go and make yourself better in high school, wherever you go. So I took that in my life, or in my mind, that wherever I go, I'm going to top for the sake, not for the sake, because somebody stole my results. Let me work hard for what will I will earn now. So I did well, but unfortunately in a boarding school, because they were taking creams of the high schools, they did not allow me to do, because it was of science that I didn't do well. But mathematics I was very good. Then I was forced to join history class, which I did in secondary school. I was good with it. But nevertheless, then the protest went forward because of that anger that I had in my heart and with other students. So 1976, we went in hand-on, forcefully, because of what other students, even us, that's what we felt, that's what they did to us. So yeah, I think that's what I can say so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you with us. And you are also privileged that you did the reading for us by the presentation by Brother Osu. What we'll do from here is that we'll allow Brother Osu to comment on his presentation. Then we'll open up the conversation for members to share what they think about this concerning issue of xenophobia in South Africa, and how do this actually affect our goal as Pan-Africans to unify the continent. Because I think if we can attain that unification, and I think it will be very easy for the whole of the continent to attain it. So thank you very much, Sister Rachel. And Brother, also please come in to comment on this. And anybody who would like to speak on this topic of xenophobic attack in South Africa, please let your hand be raised so that I can call all your name in that order. And everybody at least will have an opportunity to say something in this subject. So Brother, also please come in.
Yeah, thank you very much. And to everybody, let me say welcome again. And thank you for listening to my paper. Yes, I couldn't have written everything, because when you are writing, you have to follow a particular style of what to say and what not to say. But there are things that I can say it now. If you look at South Africa, the uniqueness of South Africa, I've traveled to about 15 African countries. But what makes South Africa unique is the place where the majority of the population are not in the hold of the economy. In that, even there's no land, they don't have shops. I mean, it's more like they can't do anything, because whatever you have to do with money. And this is the country that there's no state bank in South Africa. All the banks are private owned. And for that matter, they don't support people that wants to start. Like you're talking about disadvantaged person. Banks are not ready to do all those things. So when you come to South Africa, those who haven't been here, you find that sometimes it takes somebody from outside to come and open a shop and employ a local person. Rather, it should have been the opposite way, because in all my travels, wherever I go, some people will come and say that, are you looking for a job? Do you want to do this? We want to work with you, or we want to employ you. But here, it is the opposite side. So it shows the type of competition in terms of the work that, of course, foreigners should have done those works that people are fighting over. Everywhere you go, you find that these low-income jobs are meant for people who come up from the border and from countries whereby the currency is very low. And then when they come and do these low jobs, but for them, the money is quite great. You see, but in South Africa, you find the locals who are the kings, the princes and the princesses, rather fighting for these low income jobs. It sometimes it's quite surprising, but that is the reality. We don't know what we can do about it. So since which year? I think since I came on Facebook, since Facebook came, I started 2011. I started talking about this, trying to explain that people shouldn't condemn the xenophobia too much, because of the unique situation South Africans find themselves. But then there's a limit to everything. And I feel that Dudula approach, they have a question, they have some point to score. Of course, foreigners are involved in crime here. In fact, for the past 2 years, 3 years, I couldn't put that one in this thing. But you find, migrants from Lesotho into this Zama Zama and raping girls, um, violent crime, shooting here and there. You see, all these things, actually, I don't think they can do that in their own country. That one we need to accept. 2010, there was a kind of a chase of criminals from Harare. I was there, I visited there, and I think one is it, no, not the army, but the police, was it the police? One of the police head was killed by robbers. So that action by the government made most of the criminals there run to South Africa. And within a period of 2 years also, they were doing crimes here, which many of them were arrested. And I think this year, the consumer time? I've forgotten that police officer's name. He was in Cape Town. In fact, he made sure that those people that were arrested were returned to Zimbabwe, which even, provoked DA to condemn it that they are sending the prisoners to Zimbabwe to be killed. Obviously, that was going to happen because in Zimbabwe, they don't tolerate criminals at all. They finish them when they get them. See? So the situation in South Africa, it's very complicated because in as much as one also wants to understand it and say that okay, fine, but then excesses of everything also. We can't justify excesses in any way, and that is what we see today, whereby somebody from Africa shouldn't go to a hospital. There was an old man who is almost like in his 80s, getting to his 80s. He's lived here for a long time. He's married to a South African. He has a daughter who is now even working in Joburg. He was about to travel home to Ghana. He went to Addington. And Dudula said that no, they are not going to allow this old man to enter. He was going for medical check to see his doctor before traveling. But they said no. You see, this is an excess because to everything, at least look at the age of the man and say that, okay, you see, if somebody that you feel that this person has money can actually go to private clinic easily, private clinic is not something people like it, but the point is who can afford private clinic unless you have medical insurance or medical aid. You see, and how many people can afford that now? So it is the government hospital that everybody relies on, and everywhere you travel to. In fact, government hospital is the first place that if you are sick, you have to go in the country. And in most countries, what they do is that you pay some fee. It may not be free, but they give you the access, and you pay some money. You see, as a fee to cover the cost of the service rendered to you. That is reasonable. But to say that for health, somebody sick, you are not going to, or a pregnant woman, you are not going to allow that person to access the facility. It is quite outrageous. It's something that we can't imagine. But then it shows the level at which South Africa natives are getting to. The point that people are fed up. And then we have come to a point that this land issue also, it looks as if it is over. There's no way the land may come back to natives again. And it has generated a tension in the country, which is actually what Vavi predicted years back that, oh, okay, I hear you. Let me just run off. This is some of the things I couldn't put in the paper. But giving this picture to you, as you weigh the picture, you have to weigh this also. It's a very complicated matter. But then it doesn't also justify what Itudula is doing. And this is the, I mean, I don't know what I can say apart from the fact that all stakeholders, you have to work together and find a path out of this kind of crisis, which is not decent and is not good for Pan-Africanism and the kind of integration that we are all trying to achieve for our, for our continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Osu. Thank you very much for this presentation as well and your additional input. Now, I'll go straight to Sister Chisomo. 5 minutes, Sister Chisomo. Then I'll go to, I'll move sister, brother. So I'll move to Elder Sam after Sister Chisomo, then come back to Sister Joanna in that order, and then Brother Stephen. So Sister Chisomo, your 5 minutes, please. Share your thoughts with us.
Okay. It's not really sharing my thoughts, but just a question. Because some reports are saying even South Africans are having a problem because the South Africans themselves are not documented either. So they're not really foreigners, but they don't have the documents that are being requested. And also, I find in many African countries, the laws on asylum seekers and refugees are not very clear. People don't know them. And because they don't know them, the government officials just manipulate things, and we end up with a situation in South Africa, Malawi, and all these places because asylum seekers and refugees are not processed. And when somebody is a refugee, it means they are now entitled to live in the country. There is often a confusion about who is a refugee and asylum seeker. The term that's used is always refugee, because when you're a refugee, you have been processed and you're entitled to live in the country. So there's so much confusion about all these things, and we end up with all these problems. We have similar problems in Malawi where refugees are asylum seekers, but they're classified as refugees, but they're never processed. They've been there for donkey's years without being processed. Thank you.
Thank you. Elder Sam, please come in, Elder, as you share with us your thoughts. And also, maybe if you can respond to what Sister Chisomo is raising for maybe 5 minutes, then I'll go to Sister Georgina. Elder Sam?
Brother Pigeon, I think I have made contributions previously on this topic. Let me listen to other people and then I can come back towards the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Elder Sam. Sister Georgina, please come in.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I just want to say it's a definite case that there is excessive competition for economical or any resources in the country. It is true that we've had statistics that foreigners in South Africa are amounting to about 27 million. And the highest amount of foreigners in South Africa from Zimbabwe. Okay, I'm not targeting anything, but I'm talking about the recent statistics. So imagine, I'm just wanting to create a sort of syllogism, you know, if South Africa's population, my sister who has spoken just before me, highlighted that even in South Africa, there are other people who are not documented, but they are born and bred, and they are South Africans, meaning 11 languages of South Africa, yeah, ancestry and everything. Now, we've got so much of non-documented people, exceeding the 27 million of foreigners. When I want to put things into a syllogism sort of thing, imagine if you are a family, husband and wife, you have 2 children, and you have that amount of finance, resources to take care of 2. And the 2 exceedingly in that four-roomed house, let's say it's a four-roomed house, you find yourself with 100 inhabitants in the country. There's bound to be conflict there because your budget is not for that. There was a reading about scarcity of resources, healthcare system is going down in the country. Actually, the health workers are not meeting their needs. The educational sector as well is bamboozled, yeah? Everybody is in a state of a mental standstill, whether they are political leaders or whatever. Yes, I know they are very, very rich. They've got A, B, C, D, 28 million houses. But here we are talking about the people at the grassroots. They find themselves now in a state of poverty and so many social pathologies, crime, in fact, and everything, and slaughtering and rituals, okay? Which is something that we never grew with in South Africa. It's an adopted sort of system. There's an adopted system of, I'm just looking for my charger, my battery is running bad. So apparently, with change, there's a lot that has been adopted in South Africa, in as much as a South African and actually not me in particular, any person in any country that is African country would rather prefer to have a partner from their original country because of socialization problems. We don't know how were our brothers and sisters socialized in terms of what we are seeing. We are seeing crimes where human parts are being sold, and that is nothing to do with South Africans, but they are adopting it because maybe there's unemployment and people are employed into such bad habits. I want to say, as Rachel was reading down, I mean, here we are not here to point fingers. We are here as Africans to say we love each other. We are all Africans and we are looking forward to unity. Why do we want a United States of Africa? It's because most of us know that Africa was divided in the scramble of Africa, the Berlin Conference. And as Africans, we need to teach each other. Some people don't know that Africa was scrambled. Some people are very, very illiterate. And some people are saying no to this. And some people are promoting xenophobia because of all of the above that we have counted. But it is for us, enlightened Africans, to actually teach people, teach our brothers and sisters, why do we want a United States of Africa? Because we want to go back to the origin and where we can be stronger and where we can maintain what we call African economy, get out of IMF, do quite a lot of things. I don't want to talk about this subject. You know very well that we can be a mighty power of a United States of Africa because we've got the resources. Talk about Nigeria, talk about Ghana, talk about all over. We've got it all. But because of colonialism, we were robbed. So we need to enlighten our African brothers and sisters that it is good to forget about our differences and teach people to practice what we call Ubuntu. People to respect each other, people not to point fingers, people not to actually support the process of divide and rule. Because now we divide ourselves and the external person wants us to fight. It was read that all what is happening, the low currency Africans are being employed by whites. And that is to perpetuate this grassroots violence. Because they lose nothing, we are the people who are losing. So what we need to do, we know what we want, we know how can Africa be strong. another chapter that was read by Rachel, it says, governments must be involved. Governments are aware that people are flocking in South Africa, and governments shouldn't say South Africans are xenophobic. You rather use another word. But South Africans are under constraints. South Africans who have worked so hard. I've told you before we started this topic that we suffered apartheid, and not only apartheid in that matter. My sister Rachel has pointed out that her results were given to a poor person. It was even passes in South Africa during the apartheid government. If you were a class of 20, if they want to pass 2 A-levels, what is matric, they will only pass 2. And that Afrikaans government or the apartheid government, you wouldn't question anything. You would go to Pretoria for your results, knowing that you have passed, and you would be of no avail. So it was hopeful when South Africa became a democracy through the initiation of Soweto students, the Soweto uprisings. But now, before the actual planning, and I don't want to ridicule our government or any government in Africa, because I mean, even their corruption arises from the external part, that is from the whites. And this is all what we must teach each other, so that we can shut our mouth and stop pointing fingers to Nigerians, to Ghanaians, to South Africans. And then all in all, I want to say we are a united Africa. We are same blood, we are same everything. But it is true that our socialization is very, very different. And I, for one, am definitely afraid, following all what we hear and read about in the media. Being a single person, I would rather stay single rather than embracing partnership, whether so from my South African male or any African, but definitely as a product of apartheid, I wouldn't go for a white color in terms of my own partnership and sexuality, because I don't believe in them. They ill-treated our parents. Our history is very, very painful. We can write, we can sit and write, but we love our fellow Africans. We want to be together, and we know what is right for Africans. But there's always one thing: we should teach our political leaders to change their mindsets. Our political leaders should not take bribes that are putting all the people in the grassroots to suffer like we suffer. We are here in the diaspora because we are trying to bring ourselves into what you can call something other than the poverty, poverty stricken. We cannot do what we call, for instance, my slogan, wherever I go, I say, if we can make poverty history. If we point fingers at each other as Africans, how are we going to make poverty history? That's all I want to say. I want to conclude by saying, please, let's practice Ubuntu and be one. Let's stop undermining each other as Africans, because that will not take us anywhere. We must fight against xenophobia, and we must teach people. For instance, in England, we were taught what is called how to live in England. There's a book. In every country that is in Africa, people should be given that book, how to practice your living standards of Ubuntu. When you are in South Africa, when you are in Nigeria, when you are in Ghana, all over, that Ubuntu we must teach. We must have the standards of living written down and documented when we get into Ghana, when we get into South Africa. Maybe we will learn to understand what is the norm, the norms and values of every country, because people are acting like cannibals now. It is scary. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Sister Georgina. I had to give you a ample time for you to present this. And we are actually honored also to have you sharing your thoughts with us. We might be able to extend our session with around 15 to 20 minutes to cover up for the part that we lost at the beginning. But let me now proceed to Dr. Firi. Stephen, please have your 5 minutes with us to share your thoughts with us. Dr. Firi. Then from Dr. Firi, we will go back to Sister Rachel. So we are moving gent, male, male, female, in that order. So Dr. Stephen, please go ahead. And thank you very much, Sister Georgina.
Yes, thank you very much. And Dr. Benny, thank you for the presentation. I think it was well documented. And I had the privilege of coming to South Africa 20 years ago. So I experienced 2008 xenophobia, and I also experienced 2015. These were one of the biggest one. Then there was the formation of Operation Dudula, which was 2021. So part of my work is on Africa and the post-colonial stage, which is part of my research that I do at the university. So I've also had an interest also of looking at xenophobia, and thank you for the presentation because it's good present. It gives us some of the important facts about it. Yeah, but also what I wanted also to highlight also is when it comes to xenophobia, there's a problem of pointing fingers. South Africans point fingers to foreigners. Foreigners point fingers to South Africans. I'm talking in relation to this, and there's been a problem. So one of my area of specialization is I'm looking at the post-colonial state and Pan-Africanism. So I try to look at both. So to be honest with you, I am more some of those ones who are privileged because I'm in the university. I don't have problems of beatings and all this stuff. I'm protected. I'm one of those privileged ones, possibly what you call the armchair researchers who are more protected. So I want to put that on record. Since I came to this country, I've been in the university. Okay, yes, and I'm Stephen Peter. I'm a Zimbabwean. Okay, of a Malawian origin. So my ancestors come from Malawi, but we migrated to Zimbabwe where I was born. Then I came to South Africa to study at the university, and I studied up to I finished my PhD. And my wife is South African. So I'm like divided to all these countries. I cannot put South Africa on the side because my wife is South African. My children are everything that I am plus my wife. So I'm touched. So that makes me a Pan-African because whenever I look at things, I try to be balanced. So I'll tell you just my perspective. Just take time so that I don't go. Yeah, okay. Yes, I'll try to be within the time that I'm given. The first thing that I discovered when I was looking at the issue of xenophobia is I think the narrative, how we frame it, is wrong. There is xenophobia in South Africa. No one can deny that. But to say that xenophobia is among only Black people, I don't think it's really true. I'll tell you why. It's because there are many Black people. Xenophobia is related to class, poor people. But now you realize in South Africa, there are also Pakistans and others who are not even from here. But it's about proximity and the place where you find people. When I was doing my research and I went to Soweto and other areas trying to talk to people, I discovered that it's just poor people who are fighting toward the crumbs that have been left by capitalism. And that idea of saying that Zimbabwe is doing this, what actually our countries are doing nothing, including South Africa itself. That's why we are fighting among each other. These people are stealing money. They are mismanaging our resources so that poor people end up fighting. So I wrote a paper recently, and I'm going to present on a Pan-African conference here in UJ. One of the things that I try to do is try to understand, like, for example, if you say Operation Dudula is a vigilante, you've already put them out of the dialogue before we even look at them. That's what I was trying to say, that I don't like Operation Dudula. I don't like the way they do things. It's quite scary, to be honest with you. But I also want to listen. Why is Operation Dudula doing what it is doing? People don't ask that. They've got good for them. They might be having a methodology of doing things which is wrong. But the reason why they are doing that is based actually on true. Remember that in as much, most people who are suffering in this one are vulnerable, poor people, very poor people. Not us. When you go to Zimbabwe, I don't use a bus, I fly. There's some people, when they cross under that fence, we start looking at them on the legal perspective. We don't realize the predicament of these people. The most vulnerable are the ones that normally suffers. And also remember, the vulnerable does not only include Congolese, Zimbabweans. Zimbabweans has to be the majority because us as Zimbabweans and South Africa, we are very close in culture and almost everything. And South Africa is very close to Zimbabwe, so that it's easy. I can come and shop to South Africa and come back. So the idea that migrants of Zimbabweans might be higher, it's a possibility. And the life in Zimbabwe is also difficult. Who is causing us to fight among each other? No one asks that question. No one does. Our government, Zimbabwean government is rotten. Actually, that presentation, I didn't like one part. We say Zimbabwe is trying to do what? What is Zimbabwe really doing for the Zimbabwean? Nothing. What is South Africa doing for the South Africans? They are even stealing more here, creating more poor South Africans. So at the end of the day, you find that poor Zimbabweans who are vulnerable, poor South Africans who are vulnerable, they end up fighting among each other. You create Operation Dudula. And we spend half of our energy fighting Operation Dudula. But we don't ask ourselves, Operation Dudula, it's a vigilante group to some extent, but it didn't just come out of nothing. It actually came out of a reason. It's trying to show us that there is a problem in our states, African states. And these problems are making people so desperate that they end up fighting for those crumbs. So one thing that I did in part of my study, I tried to find ways in which, I'll give you an example. In the presentation, there's something that was a little bit misrepresented, which was Kopanang Africa. It's one unique one. Kopanang Africa against xenophobia was created in reaction to Operation Dudula. And I want to put this on record that people who were reacting against xenophobia were not foreigners, were actually South Africans who didn't like what other South Africans were doing. And if you look at South Africa itself, it's quite an irony in South Africa that not every group in South Africa is a vigilante against foreigners. There are also groups in South Africa that are actually against Operation Dudula, made up of South Africans themselves. So within South Africa itself, there has been dialogue. There have been also South Africans who didn't want what was happening. So people don't talk about that. People don't identify such differences. I think that is very, very important when you come to this country, especially when you try to understand. And another thing that I find it appalling is that also when we come to South Africa, we tend to undermine the context of South Africa, the difficulties of South Africa. Because if you look at, in Zimbabwe, there is xenophobia. I was born in Zimbabwe, I grew up in Zimbabwe, I was a Zimbabwean citizen, but I thought I was Malawian because I was called Mnyasarand from the old name of Malawi, colonial name of Malawi. But in Zimbabwe, if you are called Nyasarand, it's synonymous to Makwerekwere. So that means Zimbabweans are not different from South Africans. When South Africans call us Makwerekwere, Zimbabweans call in Malawian Nyasarand is the same thing. So the issue of xenophobia, if you look in the 1960s, there've been also xenophobia. Even if you go to Senegal, Nigeria and stuff, there've been big problems. I try to trace that. It's a problem that we all have, and we need to sit down as Africans and make a strict conversation. And there's a lot of miscommunication. The only problem that I have with Operation Dudula is they always blame everything on foreigners. Of course, if most Zimbabweans are moving from Zimbabwe to South Africa because of economic hardship, there's a possibility that there might be some Zimbabweans can be associated with criminality. It's normal. But to blame all foreigners on the basis of some of those foreigners who might have committed crime, I think that is unfair. So the reason why I liked this conversation in the prison is that I want us also to be aware. My wife is South African, okay? Is actually South African, my wife. I talk to her, we talk about these things. So one thing that is a problem that we have is misinformation. And also, there was this number that was said like 27 million foreigners in South Africa. Okay, one thing that I can tell you is the highest number of a single nation of foreigners in South Africa come from Zimbabwe. And this is simply because there's a commonality between South Africa and Zimbabwe. Actually, there's a lot of commonalities between South Africa and Zimbabwe. People don't even realize that. But the number of like 27, those are the things that are giving us a problem. These are numbers. If someone says there are 27 million
you have 2 more minutes. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. If you say there are 27 million, that is what causes commotion, the numbers. And one thing that I can tell you is the actual standard number of South Africans, it's almost above 65 million, the one that is known, of course. And we know that there are some hidden numbers. So one of the problems that it happened in South Africa that have caused commotion is these numbers saying foreigners are pouring into South Africa. They are not pouring into South Africa, but South Africa is economically strategically situated in a way that in as much as most countries around it are suffering because economically, South Africa is still standing. So it's a normal wave that people will move towards that area where they can survive. But to say that they are moving to destroy South Africa or to commit crime, I don't think that is true. But I cannot also say that foreigners are not committing crime at all. So I think what we need is just the issue of, there's a lot of miscommunication about this idea of foreign nationals and these issues that are around us. So we need now to have what I call a sincere dialogue between those who seems to protect foreigners and those who are against foreigners. Most probably, I think they might be actually be fighting for the same people, which are the vulnerable and the poor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stephen, for your perspective. I think you brought a lot of information to this conversation that are very important as well. And thank you very much for that. We have 20 minutes, but we'll add additional of 15 or 20 to cover up the minutes we lost, because we don't usually go beyond our times, but we might do for this session. So I'll go to Sister Rachel, 5 minutes, then I'll go to Sister Amma. Now I'll take the second round of hands up. So after Sister Rachel and Sister Amma, I see Brother Coco hand is up. So the next rounds of hands can be up. So let's start with Sister Rachel and then Sister Amma. 5 minutes, Sister Rachel, please.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, let me do this. I'm sorry for to make waste time. Yeah. My point is that panel or whoever is on the platform is that with xenophobia, we can say South Africans are xenophobic. But when we start, it's because of what South Africans endured during apartheid. Xenophobia, I think, is just a modern term or modernizing the whole thing. When during apartheid, tribes as Zulus and whatever were fighting against each other because of what? Colonial regime, which was apartheid. We were even sent, or our parents were moved from the cities to the locations or whatever where they were. Like when you come to Soweto, they were moved there, and they were zonal. There was a Sotho there, a Zulu here, Changan there, and we used to fight each other as children. So it's just a modern thing. Never mind, it comes to now, outside foreigners. It's not for foreigners. We are all foreigners according to South African regime, then apartheid. So now coming to this xenophobia, nobody would wanted to. I think as Africans and as Abantu or as Ubuntu, we welcome all our African people because we are born from the same God and even from the same color, I would say so, skin color. But what happened is that people started to be saying South Africans are xenophobic. It was because during democracy or liberation of South Africa, when we got or freedom, our government then, under Mr. Mandela, thank God for that, they were so kind to accept foreigners as the sort of a payback when they were in exile. That was a good thing, and it's a good under good intentions. Now, what happened to other nations, especially with Zimbabwe? When it happened when there was a famine or whatever happened in Zimbabwe during Mugabe time, and when the government was dissolving, where as a human being, where would you go? You would go to the nearest port or wherever it was suitable for you. Just to let you know, guys, South Africa, as far as in Africa, we are America of Africa. Yes, never mind, our economic status now is not good or it's bad, but we are considered to be Africa or America of Africa because of what is the economy and whatever. Unfortunately, as the ministers or the government went in and until now, then our resources became depleted because even us as South Africans, because of the economic status and whatever that happened, corruption, people started to have depleted resources, people lost their jobs, and on top of that, foreigners were, oh, I'm sorry to say that, I'm sorry to put it that way, other nationals from Africa started coming in, especially Zimbabweans and others, because of coming to look for better food or better grazes because of what was happening in Zimbabwe. People were hungry, and our government was so kind to accept them. So the only thing that they came in, when they came, they were supposed to, I don't know, but they were supposed to say, okay, we accept you. Others would come as refugees with refugee status / asylum. So, but what happened in between, I think everybody was flocking, which I think it then overwhelmed the government or even the political parties then. So when they were here, corruption started to be there. And out of human, human relations of under humanitarian issues or a level, they started accepting them, and everybody started to come up here, down to South Africa, only to find that the resources are becoming depleted and even the places where to stay. So unfortunately, they are vulnerable, and the poor who did not enough or who don't have enough resources, because people ran away from their countries, especially I would say Zimbabwe. It came with their monies and invested in suburbs, Central, whatever, those who were affording, those who were educated. But unfortunately, the vulnerable came to live with us in the location. So out of that, resources were depleted, and now that demon that I talked about, which is apartheid and capitalist, started to employ the foreigners. Because why? Because they said South Africans were by that time, because people had rights, they were demonstrated, they didn't want to take any crumbs. They knew their rights, so they started employing foreigners at the expense because they had nothing to give. Not they could accept anything because they were hungry or they are hungry. So that's why it's called cheap labor. So South Africans then they said, no, we cannot be taking cheap labor because of 1, 2, 3. So the apartheid or capitalists, even with Indians and whites, I can call them whites up to whoever, started using them even from other countries like Lesotho, Mozambique, whatever. They accepted them on that ground of being kind. But now with xenophobia, people started to say, oh, they are being employed, we are not employed, but only to find that they say, well, we don't want to accept those crumbs. But because of those people are hungry, they took crumbs, which is okay, no problem. But now the problem is there are those who came here illegal. How did they cross the borders? We don't know. How were they accepted? We don't know. But however, they started living in the locations, and there was no jobs. There's no security. They started. Pardon?
I'll give you passed your time, but I'll give you 2 more, please.
Okay, yes. They started living, and then when there was nothing for them to have nothing, they started to be what? To steal from other people and do all this kind of violence. So now the people of South Africa started complaining. When they complained, now it was saying they are xenophobic. Yes, nobody likes xenophobic. Even me, I don't like it. Even this Operation Dudula, because according to our constitution, it says health care for everybody, housing for everybody. But the government is overwhelmed. If maybe they would change the constitution, that whatever they can say, but that basic thing that everybody who's coming to at a primary level at the clinics where I was also working should be treated freely. But on top of that, I think it's a two-pronged sword. Because of those who were doing good, they were doing that, but others came to they were sort of manipulating the system, and they were not manipulating, but because they were people were government were overspending. We don't mind that because of resources were depleted because of corruption. But with Operation Dudula, well, nobody likes it. But anyway, as the professor has just said, Professor Piri said, is because of there's a reason why for this Operation Dudula, for them to protect whatever the reason they have. But because of now government, because it has now had it has loosened the batons for protection and law and order, they started taking bribes. And on top of that, it's not only even Africans, even as you have said, the Pakistanis and wherever they come from. And then when they come here with this corruption, now they are bosses, they own spaza shops and whatever. And we don't mind somebody who works very hard for their money or in South Africa, who creates a job and who will pay tax for as South Africans are paying. So this thing is a two-way prong. And also when he said that Zimbabwean, I'll quote Zimbabwe, Zimbabwean government, after people ran to South Africa as refugees. Now, once a South African goes to Zimbabwe, they're being treated as like that. But forgetting that millions and millions of Zimbabweans are in South Africa. And it's not everybody, all Zimbabweans who are being treated like that. So is this a two-way prong, which needs to be discussed thoroughly, and even as a Pan-African diaspora or whatever, to say governments, not only South Africa, which is bad, we are all bad. We all have our the apples. All the apples are bad, but now they are pointing fingers at what? At South Africa, which is not true. We should come as all of us as Pan-African, if not SADC, to discuss this. It's not only our burden; everybody's burden. I would say thank you very much with that.
Thank you, Sister Rachel, for your time and for your presentation as well. I think you are also providing another perspective. I think it's very good that you are hearing from both sides of this conversation, and we are hearing without interfering so that we can easily pick actually what's coming from both sides of the divide. Let me get to Sister Amma. Sister Amma, please also share with us what you think for this subject. Sister Amma?
Hello and good evening to those of us who are in the evening, which I think is most of us on the call. There's so much that can be said. Good topic, good discussion. Thanks to everyone for their contributions so far. I'll try not to go over my time, but let me start off by saying that the post-apartheid state in South Africa has failed the ordinary African people of South Africa. And the Africans who are in leadership in South Africa, one of whom, I'm not going to name names, is a former trade unionist, are colluding with those who were the leaders of apartheid to continue to deny the ordinary peoples of South Africa, their rights. There is enough in South Africa for everybody. Let's be clear about that. All this stuff about resources, whatever, there are plenty of resources in South Africa and throughout Africa. The issue with resources in South Africa and throughout Africa is that it's concentrated in the hands of a greedy few. And post-apartheid, some of those greedy few are fellow Africans. Let's be clear about that. That's number one. Number two, I'm not going to use the word xenophobia. There is anti-foreign sentiment being whipped up in South Africa, but as the previous speaker said, not just South Africa, where poor and vulnerable people are being tricked into thinking that the root cause of their poverty and vulnerability are other poor and vulnerable people. And those of us who are in this group who are quite frankly the more privileged, the fact that we're able to log on to this means that we're more privileged, should do our best and come together with others to challenge the narrative. And one of the things that our very recent ancestors did, which we seem to have somehow lost the ability to do, is to challenge the narrative and put out alternative propaganda, because a lot of this is a propaganda war as well. As we played Bob Marley at the beginning, one of the lines in his song, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery, none but ourselves can free our minds. If we do not free our minds, then we are going to witness our people attacking each other and blaming a fellow African for their plight, rather than blaming those who are greedy and hanging on to the resources of the country." It's very clear. Criminality, and when I'm listening to this discussion, I could be listening to this discussion. I live in Britain. At this point in time in Britain, working class white people are being told that the foreigners are the reason for are the cause of all of their problems. So we've got this same anti-migrants sentiment. I'm using that deliberately going on here. Oh, it's the migrants. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. Oh, they're coming to take all of our jobs. Oh, they're undercutting our pay. Well, get together and fight with those who have migrated in to get decent pay for everybody. Start challenging the leaders, post-apartheid leaders, African leaders who actually went into Marikana and were shooting on or ordering shooting on minors. Start challenging the post-apartheid leaders who have allowed somebody to plea bargain in South Africa, a white South African who was implicit in killing fellow African women. Do you know what I mean? Let us look at what battles we are having, and let us re-educate those who are uneducated, and particularly the historical roots. So migrant labour in South Africa was happening under apartheid from what was then called the frontline states, because South Africa, like the rest of Africa, they require cheap labour to help extract the mineral resources which belong to the people, take them so a greedy local few can get their bits of it and then send it off to the greedy corporates and nations of the world. So we need to start re-educating ourselves and educating our people, ordinary people in South Africa. And one of the very, 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 very sad things about all of this is, of all of the struggles of African peoples in the last, and I'm saying all of the struggles because let's remember, and I'm asking all of you in South Africa, the struggles have happened throughout Africa, but of all of the struggles of African peoples which fellow Africans have embraced in the last 50 years, it was the struggle against apartheid. And every South African in this group needs to take responsibility for educating their fellow South African about the fact that Nigeria welcomed people from the ANC and the PNC and other Africans struggling against apartheid, that Ghana welcomed people from the ANC and the PAC, that Libya, that Guinea, I can go on and on and on. And so every African should educate their fellow, or every South African, their fellow South African about that. If we continue with these divisions, because what's happening is, whilst as people have said, we're fighting each other, Africans are fighting each other, people, including the corrupt neo-colonialists, are living the life of luxury. So let's point the finger at the real the real enemy. And the real enemy is not the person who's coming to South Africa from Zimbabwe. It's not the person who's coming from Mozambique or Angola or Malawi or wherever, or Nigeria. It is those who are sitting at the top of the pile, those who are siphoning off money and resources day by day, those who are sometimes flying out for their healthcare, because that's what we have in the rest of Africa. So let's look at what the root causes are, and let's understand that historical picture as well, and how Africans supported South Africa through fellow South Africans in South Africa through that struggle against apartheid. It's absolutely so important. The other thing which I think we need to understand is, no, actually, let me leave that. I'm going to leave that for now. But the only other thing I will say, and probably the final thing I will say is, or reiterate, is the importance of challenging the narrative. So when I'm hearing discussions about the criminality of migrants or foreigners coming in, and I'm sitting down and I'm reading about, if I want to discuss criminality, let's talk about what those who were oppressing our fellow Africans in South Africa are still doing to this day. Still doing to this day. And yes, we challenge any criminal, but migrants are inherently more criminal than people who have lived in the country. That's a total falsehood. Because I guarantee you, if I came to, I'm just going to finish. If I look for the stats, and I think some of the things we need to do is to actually start researching and basing what we say on pure fact. If I look for the stats, I can guarantee you I will find as many native-born South Africans who commit criminal acts as those who have proportionately as those who have come in. So let's squash that one and throw that one out. Okay, but I'll finish there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just one last thing. Could I ask the paper the paper which was very good that was shared, can that actually be shared in the group? Because I'd like to share it with others if that's possible. If it can be shared in the chat, a link to the paper which we discussed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sister Amma. I think Brother Usu kindly indicate in the chat if you are okay so that we share the article you wrote. But I'll go to two more people bringing this on end. And we are now at the time we used to close our meetings. But because it started late, I'm giving that extension, of course, for this meeting. So I'll take the comment from Brother Coco. Elder Sam and Elder Gloria will be closing for us this session with what they think in regards to this, having listened to what is going on. So I'll start with Brother Coco, then Elder Sam and Elder Glenn will also follow up. But please, Brother Usu, indicate in the chat if you're okay, we share the document, or if you want us to wait a bit so that I can be able to share it with the members, because I have it in my pad. So thank you very much, Sister Amma. Brother Coco, please come
in. Greetings, comrades. Greetings, my sisters and brothers everywhere around the world, especially in South Africa today. I'm listening to Madaliso Piri, who I have read some of his papers on xenophobia, and listening to Sister Amma. I'm like, yeah, I don't even know where to start, because what you are seeing, or what you saw in South Africa in 2008 and 2015 is actually happening now in Britain, and has happened in Britain 2 times. It happened in Britain when our own brothers and sisters who came from the African Caribbeans, who were invited over by what they thought was the mother country in an empire. And when they came to England, they found venom, they found such hatred, and they didn't find any place in England, in short. And right now, there are asylum seekers who are housed in hotels across this country called England, who a lot of working family or working class white British are protesting against them, because they say they are involved in crime. Does that sound like something you know from somewhere in a country south in Africa? It's the same story. It's the same script. It could have been written for South Africa, but it's happening here as we speak. Last year, there were protests all over England because a Rwandan or let me see, a boy born in Cardiff here in the United Kingdom, but of Rwandan background, killed some little kids in somewhere in Southport here. And the outrage against that was taken out on everyone who was seen as immigrants. So this happens a lot. And I'm going to use the word which we get from my Sesotho language. So for those who don't know me, I was born in the kingdom of Lesotho. And the kingdom of Lesotho, for again, it's another misnomer because it is a kingdom within South Africa. Even though I am from Lesotho, I am a foreigner in South Africa. I cannot work in South Africa. My people, I think Brother Owusu refer to them and say they are doing the work of Zamazamas. That's how they are known in South Africa. They are only known as criminals. In fact, one policeman called them animals. So the phrase I was going to refer here is called, it's to say the foreigner, sepalo hulu kila molata, la mongamotsi kikukuta. So what I'm saying is the biggest shit belongs to the foreigner. The one who is the owner of the village, no, it's nothing. It's nothing. We can do everything to sweep it under the carpet or under anywhere because it's nothing. All right. So having said that, this is what you call othering in English or othering in some other talks. We other each other. And I'll remind you, for the South Africans who don't know history, Moshe owned most of that land, which is now Free State. He even counted Moroka of the Barolo, part of that country, with Carolus Badges, or Peter Davids, and the others who were of the Krukas and the Koranas, who came with some Western missionaries. And what did they do? They stabbed Moshe in the back and have the Boers to come in and claim the land which belonged to the Basotho people. Now the Basotho people have the mountains there. They are told, farm the mountains, go to the mountains. So Lesotho is a prisoner within South Africa for the Basotho people. All right? So these are all what you call normalizing the abnormalities. The capitalist owns everything. And we who are the workers, we go and work for pittance and get paid and also fight for those scraps. And those who cannot fight for the scraps, what do they do? Let me ask you, what do they do, my brothers and sisters? Right? Let me give you again a small history lesson. My family name is Nonyane, for those who don't know. Nonyane, 90% is in South Africa. 10% maybe, or 5% is in Lesotho. Another 5% is in Botswana. Where do I belong? I cannot go and work in Botswana. I cannot go and work in South Africa. I'm a foreigner in both countries. But those countries, are they really, really countries where I should not go? Aren't those my forefathers' lands? Don't tell me about being illegal. Why should I be illegal in Africa? What are those borders there for as Africans? Why do we continue to fight over the borders that are restraining us as Africans? Why? Last one before I step off. I'm married to a Sierra Leone woman. She came to live in Lesotho for a while. But the reason we left Lesotho was that in Lesotho itself, the woman felt unwelcome. She had the darker skin. She's a sun-kissed woman, beautiful. But in Lesotho, as well as in South Africa, she was unwelcome. The word makorekore is being used as a tool was a weapon for anyone who doesn't look like light skin, right? So that boils down to what Malcolm X said. Who taught you to hate yourself on the 5th of May in 1962? Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such an extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your mouth, the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself? The long story, you go look for that story. It tells you the story. As Africans, why do we hate ourselves? Why do we hate our own brothers? Why don't we come together and fight for each other? We can talk nice stories long and whatever for the whole year. It starts with Ubuntu. That Ubuntu starts by loving your neighbor. And who is your neighbor? Your neighbor is a Zimbabwe. Your neighbor is a Musud. Your neighbor is a Mozambique. If you are ever called Mozambique, because once you unpack that Mozambique, it's full of your own brothers and sisters. Why do you draw a line between Zimbabwe and Mozambique? How do you even draw that line? Then they are everywhere. They are both in Zimbabwe and in Mozambique. The Shangans, they are brothers with the Zulus in South Africa, as well as in Ndebele in Zimbabwe. But why do we hate each other? I went to Senegal some time ago with my other half. My other half carried a British passport. You know what they did? Yeah, I'm finishing, brother. They sort of restrained me because I was carrying a sort of passport. In Senegal, Dakar, I could not move anywhere in that airport because I was carrying an African passport. But my other half, who was carrying a British passport, was free to go anywhere. So it's everywhere. This problem is everywhere. It's not just South Africa, but South Africa is being a manifestation of a problem of self-hate. Let me stop there.
Thank you, Brother Coco. Indeed, you've touched on so many things that need serious reflection on. But thank you very much, Elder Sam. As an elder in this forum, you have lived South Africa for those period of time during apartheid, or even before apartheid, post-apartheid, and where we are today. You've listened to this conversation and various opinions that have been raised from various fronts. As an elder, please feel free to share with us what do you think as we come towards the end of this session today. And that's Sam?
Thank you, Brother Pigbin, everybody on the platform. That's why I wanted to be at the end, because my position is well known. I'm a child of Africa. When I left South Africa in 1978, I stayed in beautiful countries of Africa where the leaders, revolutionary leaders, harbored us, gave us shelter, gave us food, gave us weapons to fight the revolution for the freedom of South Africa. Unfortunately, the revolution was thwarted, and I've been saying on this platform, South Africa is not a free country, especially for the African majority. So what is happening? It is apartheid continued in a disguise of freedom that the people proudly say they liberated as Nelson Mandela and them. That was not true. South Africa is still an oppressed country, and it is bolstered by the constitution that we're given. We were given a constitution that was going to perpetually put us in this situation where we are. So brothers and sisters, from Sister Georgina to the rest, all the people that spoke here just qualified that South Africa is not free, and these turmoils that we are experiencing are going to continue until true liberation comes. And this applies to all African countries. I cannot single out any country. Maybe Namibia now, with the new president that is already said education is free in Namibia. Here in South Africa, we don't even have even that. In 1976, we were the product of that struggle of 1976. We still don't have free education in South Africa. So brothers and sisters, everybody, Brother Coco, you can work in South Africa if the jobs were there. There are no jobs. So you are going to struggle like everybody who struggle in South Africa. If you come from any country and you say, I want to take citizenship of South Africa, I don't think there's a law that says you cannot be a South African. Now, in conclusion, we need to bring all our brothers and sisters from other countries also to this platform. You will know of John Boassa from Congo. He's a brother, he's a friend, he's a comrade to me because I invite him to this. We need to educate our people. The revolution must still continue until neocolonialism, apartheid, and all forms of colonialism and imperialism are removed from the face of our continent. The unity of Africa will then be visible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elder Sam. And I think I really want to, first of all, thank all members who have found an opportunity to share their thoughts. And as we always say, our time is up and I've gone 15 minutes extra. Of course, I've notified the leadership of the class for this. And to me, this is not a conversation that you're going to end today. This is a conversation we can only end when the action ends. And as long as the action continues, we shall never stop speaking. Because if we stop speaking, it will continue to be worse. And therefore, some might say we are just speaking. But in the process of speaking, we have been able to educate each other in this platform. We have been able to point to each other some element of history we are not aware of. We have been able to give not only a research document, but personal experience and personal knowledge on what we know and what needs to be done. Our brothers and sisters from South Africa have shared what they think. Our brothers and sisters around South Africa have shared this, from as far as Ghana to Zimbabwe to Malawi and to Lesotho in South Africa. We have shared, and it is very common that all of us truly agree that we don't support what is going on, irrespective of the reasons and why we are here. The majority of us who have spoken do not accept what is going on. And the key issue is some of the reasons of why this is going on, we know. We have shared about it. We have explained them. But the key question is, how do we overcome this? Some of the proposals have also been put forth on how we can do this. But we must be mindful that there was nothing like South Africa before 1884. There was nothing like Zimbabwe before 1884. And therefore, there was no an illegal African migrant anywhere in the continent before that time. As much as we can try to label illegal migrants and whatever, we are basing that argument on a border of 1884. Africa did not start from 1884. Neither we, the people of Bantus or Nilotes in Africa, never started in 1884. And therefore, the biggest struggle and the opportunity and the biggest solution to this problem is a united Africa, where we can do away with the so-called borders that will label you as Zimbabwean. Even if you're married there, even if you're born there, somebody still want to trace your roots. And that's why, in what Sister Amas explained, when South Africa was under apartheid, all Africa saw them as Africans, not as South Africans. And everybody opened a door for support and solidarity, not because they belonged to South Africa, but because they were Africans fighting the whites that were subjugating them or subjecting them. And therefore, that spirit of Ubuntu was expressed before. Whatever is going on today, we might claim so many reasons, as it has been spoken. There are many reasons why Zimbabweans are in South Africa. But after all, are they not brothers and sisters? So do you have to have a reason to go visit your brother or your sister or your uncle or your aunt? And should you be chased away because you have gone to visit your uncle and your sister? And if there's a problem in your home, should you stay there and die and don't go to your uncle to seek for support? And the biggest thing again is on leadership that has come out very clearly. There's a failed leadership in the continent, not only in the South Africa, in the entire continent of Africa, that for the last 60 years, that leadership has failed to provide what is necessary. But it is so unfortunate and so sad that at this particular era, we are still seeing what is going on in South Africa. What actually Elder Sama said is not xenophobia, it's an apartheid. Because the people of South Africa are still being subjected to an apartheid system. The people of South Africa are still being subjected to very worse condition in the so-called their country. So they are not only fighting the brothers outside, they are also fighting internally to survive. These are things that we must put in context. And as I've said, that we might not end this conversation, we might not exhaust this conversation, and we must never stop this conversation. We must continue to speak of this until the day we shall overcome it. And it must be a struggle, both internally, as South Africans struggling to overcome it, and we, the continent, must also support rather than pointing fingers. We must support the process of overcoming this the same way we supported some of the process of overcoming apartheid. It is not the mistake, it is a problem that all of us must try to see how we can support it. And that's what I can say from my side, that indeed we are doing what is necessary. Irrespective of how people can say we are just talking, that talk is the beginning of action. And that talk itself is an action. So, comrades, over here in Kenya is already late. It's almost 11:20 p.m. in East Africa, in Kenya. And I believe it's also late for Elder Leroy, wherever he is. But I cannot thank you enough for what you've done today. I'll ensure that we share the recordings of this session. And if Brother Usu, if you can allow me, through your permission, probably I can share also as well the presentation that was done by Brother Usu, and I will be able to share the group chat so that you can follow up in the group probably, so that I can share with you this presentation. And you can also contact me through the post. If you got the post to this group, whoever had attached that post, probably it was forwarded. Just feel free to track me so that you can be able to join this conversation, so that you can continue with this conversation. But having said that, comrades, I don't have much to say once again, because I know it's very late. I just want to thank you very much for your time, very much for your time. I have shared the group link for Conscious Empathetic Group. You can follow up with that link to join the group, so that I can share with you the documents of this. The recording of this will be available by next week. So if you wish to also receive the recording, so that you can maybe reshare or even listen to it or use it as a tool to inform others, also feel free to get in touch so that you can also have the recording. Again, comrades, it's already late. Permit me to thank you very much for your time, and that brings us to the end of our session today. May you all have a lovely evening, but may you never stop this conversation until we conquer, until we become victorious. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody. And
Goodbye.
We
Good
shall
night.
indeed conquer.
Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Good
Thank you very
night.
much. Thank you. Good night. Good night.